Yeah, it's lovely to be here. So it's always a privilege to get a chance, I think, to stand up front with a mic and talk about your faith and the Bible and hopefully, pass on something that might be helpful. In a minute, I'm going to come to what we're going to look at tonight. And I'm thinking it's probably a familiar story, but I'm hoping to bring a couple of new insights to it. But this is a guy called Bruce Marciano. Don't know if any of you have seen him. If you look on YouTube, there's a film of Jesus' life called The Gospel According to Matthew, and he played Jesus. But all actors have to find a kind of character type for Jesus, because there's not a lot in the Bible about his character. So he decided he was going to play Jesus as a man of joy. And that's why I love. And that's why he's got a big smile. And you see so many scenes in that where he's just laughing and, communicating with people in a way that's so warm. And when you Google Jesus, 90-odd% of the pictures of Jesus make him look very serious. And that's not the Jesus we find in the Gospels. We find a Jesus who children, second-class citizens, sick people, they love to be around him. He wasn't severe. He wasn't serious like that. And humor can be just as holy as seriousness. So it's one of the things I love about that particular image of Bruce Marciano's Jesus there. And, okay. Now, I don't know if you think about the parables much. I'm a big fan of the parables. Before Paul ever wrote his letters telling us how to be Christians, Jesus told stories about how to be Christian, how to follow him on this earth. And they're well worth unpacking, because there's loads of stuff in these stories that isn't obvious when you first read them. So it's well worth digging into and finding out a whole load more. So I think of them as tales of the unexpected. I don't know if you're probably all too young, but there was a series in the 1970s. Well, you're not old enough for this either, are you, Tom, I bet? Roald Dahl's Tales of the Unexpected. There were dancing girls. That's why I can't show you the video. There were flames going like this, and there was this music playing. And there were always stories written by Roald Dahl with a twist in the tale. And Jesus' parables were full of those little twists in the tale. Now, if you've been a Christian a long time, that can be a problem, because you've read the parables a lot. And if you don't know the culture, that can be a problem, because you don't realize the twists. The story I'm going to look at tonight came out of the Old Testament, which is part of the twist, because it didn't go the way everyone expected it to go from the Old Testament. And that was a big punch to the people who heard it. Now, a couple of things about the parables. They are a brilliant way of teaching, because if you tell a short story, we can all remember it really easily. We don't need to see it written down if you can't read. You just hear a little story, like a little joke. You can go home and tell someone else. So it's a brilliant way of teaching. It really is like jokes that you pass around on the internet or whatever. And Jesus knew that. The other thing about stories that Jesus told is he wanted interaction. I go to a church when, if you read, say, this parable I'm going to read to you now, at the end of it, we all say, this is the word of the Lord, thanks be to God. Jesus didn't expect people to say that. He wanted people to go, hang on a minute, I want to know a bit more about what you meant when you said that in a parable. He wanted a conversation. Parables create the relationship he's looking for. So we're allowed to go, I don't understand that parable, or I don't like that bit. Jesus wants us to wrestle with it, to argue back, to talk back, because that's the idea of his stories, is that they create relationship. So, one more little thought about parables. They come out of everyday life, right? And that's a really important thing. He uses the ordinary things. He uses bread and wine and sheep and children and widows and all kinds of things. People getting mugged. The Good Samaritan is an episode of Casualty, basically. He takes these stories from life and he steeps them in stuff of the kingdom, okay? So that's, to me, is exactly what happens there. I love the moment she realizes he's a vicar, and she suddenly thinks, I've got to behave. Mustn't do what I was doing before. And what's great about Jesus is people didn't think like that. They didn't go, it's Jesus, quick, everybody say the right thing. Everybody cover up what they're really thinking. No, you don't find that in the Gospels. People are honest with Jesus. They know they can tell him what they're thinking, why they're thinking it, and that's why he has all this banter going on. It's what we might call praying. That's really praying, isn't it? Communicating with Jesus, not telling him what we think he wants to hear, but having that real relationship with him. So, I'm not going to... Oh, there you go. Now, I don't know if you recognize that beautiful couple up there. I'll give you a close-up on those two. I haven't got green eyeshadow on today, but hopefully I don't look that much older. I used to be into punk rock. In fact, I still am. 70s punk, right? And when I worked, that's at Lee Abbey, by the way. When I worked at Lee Abbey in the 1980s, we just used to do loads of crazy things. And one night they had a posh do. So me and a few friends thought we'd gate crash it as a punk band. And so that's what we did. So that was what we were doing. We were doing just stupid songs and stuff. But the reason I put that up is there is a part of me that is a rebel. Not least the part that's like punk, that likes punk. And there's a rebel in this story. So I have a soft spot for him, really. And I don't know about if there's a part of you that does like to push boundaries and try things. So we're going to come to the actual story. But one other thing to tell you before then. My favorite band, they're called The Clash. And the lead singer, who's now dead, sadly, Joe Strummer, he had a great quote that I liked. He said this: when I started out, everyone told me all I needed was 3 chords and the truth. He said, it turned out all I actually needed was 2 chords and a few vague ideas. And that's following Jesus. You don't have to have all your theology right. You don't have to know it all. This is a journey of discovery. All Jesus says is, take a step, follow me. That's the beginning of it. And every day he's there saying to us, follow me. Each day is new. Each day the invitation is to follow. And we don't have to know it all, and we don't have to be brilliant. The thing about punk was you didn't have to be good at it. You just had to make a start. That's why loads of bands started, because anyone could join in. So anyone can follow Jesus, can't they? Okay, so I'm going to show you this part first before I read you a little bit of the Bible. And this is the story I just want to think a little bit about. I'm going to read you the last part of it. It's from Luke 15, which was mentioned in that video a little bit. While the son was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arm round him, and kissed him. The son started to say to his father, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe, put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. Like so many of Jesus' stories, that doesn't end there. We might think it does. Great, having a party, it's fantastic. But of course the story goes on, which we'll come back to. But that story is based on the Old Testament account of Jacob and Esau. 2 brothers, their father was Isaac. Jacob was a cheat and a wheeler dealer. He cheated his father and he cheated his brother and he ran away from home. So he was the original prodigal. But God turned him into Israel, which is the great news is God starts with a cheat and turns him into the founder of the people of God. Got to remember that. The Bible's full of that. People who are far from perfect, people who are dysfunctional, God takes them and he makes something else of them. So, whenever a rabbi started talking to people and said, I'll tell you a story, because rabbis use stories all the time, they would say there was a father with 2 sons, and they'd all go, oh, we love this. This is our story. Brilliant. And then Jesus says, oh, and when he came home, he wasn't filthy rich, like Jacob, who came back filthy rich with loads of wives and children. He had no children, he wasn't married, and he was just filthy. And the people go, hang on a minute, that's our story. What are you saying about us? That's us you're talking about. And of course Jesus knows that. And so again, he's flipped that story that is so familiar to them and given them a whole different take on it. I've got some questions here relating to this. I can just look here, can't I? I keep forgetting that. Now, there's a joke at the start of this story which you won't laugh at. I can guarantee that now, okay? Because the problem with jokes is they're always cultural. I bought a wardrobe the other day from Bonnie Tyler. The problem is every now and then it falls apart. Oh, thank you very much. I've got a fan. Now, I'm not picking on people, but would anyone dare to put their hand up and say they don't get that joke? Thank you very much. Perfect. That's why we don't laugh at jokes in the Bible, because you've got to know the references. The joke is that Bonnie Tyler sang a song called Total Eclipse of the Heart, and in it had a line, every now and then I fall apart. That's it. That's the joke, okay? Except now it's about a wardrobe. So, okay, the Prodigal Son begins with a joke that we don't get, because the son goes to his father, the youngest son, and does this thing about saying, I want my part of your inheritance. In other words, I wish you were dead. Give it to me now so I can hike off. And what everyone would expect is the father clipped him round the ear and said, don't be so stupid, get back to work. But he doesn't. The father says yes. And everybody laughs. Because no self-respecting father would say yes to their son like that. But this one does. And as you can see, it's hilarious, isn't it? No. Because it's like you never heard of Bonnie Tyler's song. It's not funny. But it is funny to the people of Jesus' day. It's really, really weird. And it wrong foots them. Makes them laugh. So why did the father say yes? Well, I think there's something in that about what we've all been given, which is freedom. Freedom of choice, haven't we? Free will. You and I have been given our lives, and God's waiting to see what we do with them, and waiting to see how we'll invite him to be involved. Just like the prodigal and his brother. They had their lives. So that's a question for us, isn't it? What are we doing at the moment? What's good? What's a struggle? Where is God in both those things? But we've been given those things. Now, when the son comes back, they kill the fattened calf, not a lamb. If they were going to celebrate the family, they would just need a lamb. So clearly the father is celebrating with the whole community, if you like, the whole village. Because it's very important that he declares to everybody that the boy is back. And we're going to come back to that. Now, who should have been out looking? The brother. It was the older brother's job to go looking for his younger brother and make sure he came home safely. But he was having none of it. Who's the older brother? Well, all those religious experts around Jesus who think they know it all. And that's why it ends with the story of the older brother who disrespects his father, says terrible things that no son should say to his father, and won't listen and won't come to the party. Because Jesus is desperate that all these religious experts who think they're all right get the message that they're not. Because you see, all these sinners around Jesus, they know they're lost. Probably like we know we're lost. But when pride takes over and you think you're all right, very dangerous. Because you forget how much you need Jesus. And these experts didn't think they needed Jesus. But the older brother should have been out looking and rescuing his son. And that's why, he was so offensive to the father, because these religious experts were constantly being offensive to Jesus. This is a great one. I love this. Who paid for the party? Well, we have to go back to the beginning of the story. You see, because what happens is the father divides his inheritance. He gives a third to the younger, 2/3 to the older, and he now has no money. Now, the prodigal doesn't have any money. He's wasted it all. Who's left? The older brother, no wonder he was so miffed. It's his money they're spending on the party. He's paying for this welcome home party for the brother he hates. That's quite interesting, isn't it? And that, again, this is the generosity of God, tapping into what we have and using what we have to help others. And the main question with all parables is, who are you in the story today? You might feel like the prodigal, I frequently do, run off again, gone off to do my own thing. You might be the older brother, struggling with criticizing others. We live in a blame age, very easy to criticize others. We're encouraged to do it, not by Jesus. He doesn't want us to be like the older brother. You might be the father, being generous, because of course that's the kind of ultimate call of the story, be welcoming and generous. Or you might be the mother. Where's the mother? She's invisible. She doesn't get a mention. Maybe you feel like that at the moment, that you're not noticed, that you're in the background. No one takes any notice of you. Do you feel God takes any notice of you? You might be that character. So that's the beauty of stories, that you may be any one of those characters on any different day. And this is the most important question before I show you my last little video. Why did the father run? Well, there's this great little passage in the Old Testament. You may know this already, Deuteronomy 21. It tells the people this: if someone has a stubborn and rebellious son who doesn't obey his father and mother and will not listen to him when they discipline him, his father and mother shall take hold of him and bring him to the elders at the gate of his town. Then the men of his town are to stone him to death. All Israel will hear of it and be afraid. In other words, the way you spread the word about not being rebellious to all the other young guys is kill the first one who's rebellious. I remember years ago, I've got 2 daughters, and when the younger one was a lot younger, a friend said to me, have you thought about what you're going to do when she brings home the first boyfriend? And he said, I'll tell you what a friend of mine said. He said, I think I'll shoot the first one and word will get round. Well, that's that. You punish the son. That's why, in the end of the story, what does the father say? You were dead. But I don't say that. You're alive. I believe in resurrection, the father says. The community wants to declare you dead. They want to throw stones at you. And that's why the father runs. He wraps himself around the son so that if anyone throws any stones, it will hit the father, not the son. So that, yeah. Is that God saying, Dave, you're going on too long? Right. So I'll just say that one more time. The father runs to wrap himself around the son so that if anyone starts throwing stones at the son, it will not injure him, it will hit the father. And that is a vision of what the cross is going to be when Jesus dies on it and what he is going to take into himself so that it doesn't hit us. And at the end of it, well, not at the end of it, but at that point in the story, there is a party. So I wanted to end with a bit of a celebration. This is a moment from a film called Sunshine on Leith. I don't know if you know the film. All you need to know about this clip is that people are happy because they're falling in love, and so they sing and dance, because what else do you do when you fall in love? And what I'd like you to notice is most of the singers and dancers who end up in this are not trained. We're back to punk rock. These are just ordinary people invited in to have a go. So watch this, and then I'll say a little prayer at the end. We've all seen the dance. If you'd like to stand up, and we'll have a go. No, but you know, that is, again, is a great illustration for me of like things like when Jesus fed 5,000 people, Palm Sunday when all the people spilled on the streets, all these people invited to join in this dance, not because they're professionals, because they were just there. And they were quickly taught what to do. And you and I, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how professional you are. My wife calls me Frank Spencer. I don't know if you remember Frank Spencer, but he was very clumsy. That's me. I am clumsy. I'm socially awkward. Give me a mic and I'm all right. That's about it. And Jesus says, just join in. Just come along. Make a start. It isn't 500 miles. It's just one step. So I'm going to leave you with a little prayer I wrote the other day, just before handing back to Tom. It's kind of like a little blessing. May you know peace in the midst of your living. May you know hope in the midst of your worry. May you have strength for the hills and the valleys. May you have courage for the challenges ahead. May you have bursts of joy and a smile to share. And may you have love for those in your life. And may you sense that you are not alone, and that there is one who is always beside you, a friend who has loved you from the start and will continue to love you into forever. Amen.